On Mother's Day this year, my mother sent me a bill for $457,000. Not a joke, not a metaphor, a literal itemized invoice. The subject line read, "Cost of raising a failure." She didn't send it privately. She emceed 52 people, every aunt, uncle, cousin-in-law, and family friend we had, spread across 5 states, California to New Jersey. 3 generations watching. I was standing in line at a coffee shop when my phone started vibrating nonstop. Email after email, group chat notifications exploding. I opened the message and saw my name typed neatly at the top of a spreadsheet. My entire life reduced to line items and dollar amounts. Hospital delivery, $18,600. Diapers and formula, first 2 years, $7,400. Clothes, shoes, school supplies, $41,300. Tutoring due to lack of effort, $22,000. Extracurriculars attempted, $19,800. College expenses, $94,000. Emotional toll, priceless, she'd written. Then crossed it out and replaced it with $254,900. At the bottom, bolded. Total, $457,000. And then one final line. Payment due, accountability. I could feel people in the cafe staring at me. I didn't realize I was shaking until I nearly dropped my phone. Messages were already coming in. Some confused, some uncomfortable. A few laughing emojis. One cousin typed, "Is this real?" She wanted me to cry. She wanted me to apologize. She wanted me to feel small, the way I always had. This wasn't the first time my mother had humiliated me, but it was the first time she'd done it with an audience this large, and it wasn't accidental. The timestamp said 7:02 a.m. She'd planned this, timed it, released it like a press statement. By noon, the family video call had been scheduled. Just to talk things through, she wrote, as if this were a misunderstanding, as if she hadn't just invoiced my existence. I didn't respond. I didn't defend myself. I didn't explain. I went home, sat on the edge of my bed, and stared at the wall while my phone kept buzzing. Because buried in my email, 3 folders deep under a name, no one would ever think to open, I had something she didn't know about. Something I'd been quietly collecting for 3 years. Receipts, statements, documents, proof. The bill was only the opening act. She thought she was exposing me. What she'd really done was give me permission to stop protecting her. By evening, the family call had turned into a full-blown spectacle. Faces packed into little squares on my screen. Curious, judgmental, awkwardly silent. My mother sat front and center, calm, composed, wearing the soft smile she reserved for performances. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't ask if I'd seen the email. She went straight to the point. "I just think," she said gently, "it's time everyone understood how much I sacrificed and how little I got back." Before that email, before the bill and the public spectacle, my life was small in a way I'd learned to appreciate. I'm 29 years old. I live alone in a 1-bedroom apartment just outside the city. Nothing fancy, 2nd-floor walk-up. Thin walls, a kitchen counter that wobbles if you lean on it too hard. But it's mine. I pay the rent myself. I always have. I work as a tar risk analyst at a mid-sized consulting firm. It's not glamorous, but it's steady, predictable. I like numbers because they behave. If something doesn't add up, there's always a reason. You can trace it, prove it, fix it. People don't work that way. Most mornings, I wake up at 6:15. Coffee, shower, same podcast on the drive to work. I meal prep on Sundays. I track my expenses. I pay extra on my student loans when I can. I've never missed a payment on anything in my life. This is important to understand, because my mother has always told a very different story about me. In her version, I'm careless, unmotivated, difficult, the child who never quite lived up to her potential. My older sister, Lauren, is the opposite. Lauren is 3 years older than me. She's a corporate attorney, married, 2 kids, White House in a quiet neighborhood with a porch swing and matching patio furniture. My parents helped with the down payment. They call it an investment in family. When Lauren graduated law school, my parents threw her a party, rented out a restaurant, open bar, toasts about hard work and sacrifice. When she made partner, my mother framed the announcement and mailed copies to relatives. When I graduated college, my mother sent a text. 2 days later, proud of you. No exclamation point. My father was always there, technically. Present in the room, present at holidays, present in family photos. He's a quiet man, avoids conflict, believes peace is more important than truth. Whenever my mother said something sharp, something cutting, he'd squeeze my shoulder and say, "She doesn't mean it the way it sounds." I used to believe him. Growing up, Lauren was celebrated. I was evaluated. Her report cards were posted on the fridge. Mine were discussed. Her mistakes were phases. Mine were character flaws. If she forgot something, it was because she was busy. If I did, it was because I wasn't trying hard enough. I learned early how to stay out of the way, how to keep my head down, how to make myself useful without being noticed. I cooked, cleaned, babysat, helped my mother organize events she took credit for. I showed up early and left late. It wasn't dramatic. There were no screaming matches or slammed doors. Just a steady, quiet erosion. The kind that makes you doubt your own memory. By the time I moved out at 22, I'd stopped expecting approval. I focused on things I could control. My work, my finances, my space. I built a life that didn't need permission. That's why most people were shocked by my mother's email. They'd never seen her behave that way before. She's charming in public, thoughtful, generous with praise, as long as it isn't directed at me. To outsiders, she's the image of a devoted parent. At family gatherings, she'd say things like, "We're just so proud of Lauren," then turn to me and add, "And of course this one." Well, she's still figuring things out. People would laugh politely. I'd smile. The moment would pass. I never corrected her. I never defended myself, partly because I didn't think anyone would believe me, partly because I didn't want to be seen as ungrateful, and partly because I thought, if I just stayed steady long enough, she'd stop. She never did. What no one knew, not my cousins, not my co-workers, not even my father, was that 3 years ago. Something happened that quietly changed the way I saw everything. Something small, accidental, easy to miss, but once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. And from that moment on, I stopped arguing with my mother. I started keeping records. Because if there's one thing my job taught me, it's this. When someone insists the numbers prove their story, it's usually because they're counting on you never checking. And I had already started checking long before the $457,000 bill ever existed. The first thing you notice, once you start paying attention, is how consistent it all is. Not loud, not obvious, just precise. I didn't start collecting evidence because I planned to expose my mother. I started because I needed to reassure myself that I wasn't imagining things. Gaslighting works best when it's subtle, when every incident on its own seems too small to challenge. It starts with timing. My college graduation was the first crack. I graduated in May 2018 with honors. Not top of my class, not extraordinary, but solid. I sent the date months in advance, booked the extra ticket, confirmed the hotel. The morning of the ceremony, my father showed up alone. "Your mother has a migraine," he said. "Too sick to travel." I nodded, smiled, walked across the stage. Later that week, she posted photos on Facebook of herself in New York at Lauren's Firm Awards dinner. Same weekend, same smile. 12 photos. Caption: "So proud of my brilliant daughter." I liked the post. That's what you do. When I landed my first full-time job, I called home to tell them. My mother listened, then asked how much it paid. When I told her, she paused. "That's fine," she said. "I just hope you don't get comfortable. Comfort breeds laziness." When Lauren bought her first house, my parents contributed to $75,000 toward the down payment. They called it a gift, a reward. I found out through an Instagram story. When my lease went up for renewal and my rent increased, I mentioned it casually over dinner. My mother frowned. "Well, that's what happens when you make certain choices," she said. "Maybe if you'd planned better." Planned better than what? I paid my bills. I worked full-time. I didn't ask for help. But the message was clear. Lauren's needs were shared responsibilities. Mine were personal failures. The more I watched, the clearer the pattern became. My birthday cards always arrived late. Lauren's were hand-delivered with gifts inside. If I missed a family dinner because of work, it was a sign of poor priorities. If Lauren did, it was because her job was demanding and important. Even compliments had conditions. "You're so independent," my mother would say. Almost impressed. Almost resentful. Like independence was something I'd done despite her. My father noticed things, I think. Or maybe he noticed and chose not to name them. When I'd finally push back, gently, he'd intervene. "She just worries about you more," he'd say. You know how your mother is. She doesn't mean harm. I used to believe that. Then came the college fund. Both Lauren and I were supposed to have education trusts. My grandparents set them up when we were kids. Same amount, equal. It was mentioned casually over the years, always as reassurance. You won't have to worry about loans, my mother used to say. We've taken care of that. Lauren graduated debt-free. I didn't. By the time I finished college, I had 6,400 in student loans. When I asked my mother about the trust, she told me it had been depleted earlier than expected. Unexpected expenses, she said. Tutoring, summer programs, things you needed. I didn't question it then. Why would I? She was my mother. And questioning her always came at a cost. But 3 years ago, I was visiting Lauren's apartment when she stepped out to take a call. Her laptop was open on the kitchen counter. An email notification popped up. My name was in the subject line. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't trying to read it, but I saw enough to feel that familiar tightness in my chest. Later that night, I checked something I'd never thought to check before. My credit report. I don't know what I expected. Maybe a clean slate. Maybe nothing at all. Instead, I found accounts I didn't recognize. Old ones. Opened when I was barely out of college. Cards maxed out, then closed. My score was itemized. I stared at the screen for a long time. I'd never missed a payment on anything. I didn't even have a credit card at that point. I'd been living off debit and caution. That's when I stopped assuming incompetence and started considering intent. I hired a CPA, quietly, paid out of pocket, asked questions without accusing anyone. The answers came slowly, but they came. Addresses that weren't mine, payments I didn't make, benefits claimed I never authorized. And then, one afternoon, while sorting through old paperwork, I found it. A statement from the Education Trust, dated August 2016, 1 month before my freshman year, withdrawn in full, transferred to an account that didn't belong to me. I remember sitting on my apartment floor, papers spread out around me, heart pounding, not with anger but with clarity. It wasn't random. It wasn't favoritism. It wasn't me being difficult. It was a system, a quiet one, maintained over decades, protected by politeness and denial and the assumption that mothers don't do things like this. From that day on, I stopped confronting my mother. I started documenting. Screenshots, PDFs, statements, dates, amounts. I stored them in a folder on my phone and named it something forgettable. Something boring. Insurance. I told myself I'd never need it. That it was just peace of mind. That someday I'd laugh about how paranoid I'd been. But as the months passed and the comments continued, and the comparisons never stopped, I realized something else. She wasn't just punishing me. She was preparing a narrative. And narratives only matter when they're told in front of an audience. Which is why, when my mother announced the Mother's Day family gathering 2 weeks before the bill arrived, something in me went cold. Because this wasn't just another holiday. This time she wasn't planning to whisper. The message came in the family group chat on a Tuesday afternoon. Mother's Day is coming up, my mother wrote. It's been too long since we've all been together. I'm planning something special this year. Everyone should come. No emojis, no exclamation points. Just certainty. She listed the details like an itinerary. Date, time, location, my grandmother's house, the old place outside the city, where every major family event eventually landed. Birthdays, anniversaries, memorials, the kind of house that made things feel official. By the end of the message, she added one more line. This is important. Please make an effort. I stared at my phone longer than I needed to. My grandmother's house wasn't neutral ground. It was symbolic. Every framed photo on the wall told a version of our family. Story my mother had carefully curated. Lauren at graduations. Lauren at weddings. Lauren holding babies. I was there too, occasionally, always positioned at the edge of the frame. When I told my father about the gathering, he hesitated. Your mother's been under a lot of stress, he said. This might be good for her. That was his way of asking me not to upset the balance. Lauren called the next day. You're coming early to help, right? She asked, like it was already decided. Mom said you always know where everything goes. I agreed, automatically. That muscle memory hadn't gone away yet. The week leading up to Mother's Day felt heavy. Like waiting for weather you know is coming but can't prepare for. I went to work, answered emails, ran my usual errands. At night, I opened the folder on my phone and checked it. The way someone checks locks before bed. Everything was still there. The trust withdrawal statement, the credit card applications, the tax filings I hadn't authorized. Nothing new, nothing missing. 2 days before the gathering, my grandmother called me. Her voice sounded tired. Older than usual. You'll be here on Sunday, she said. Yes. There was a pause. Then quieter. Stay close to me. I didn't ask what she meant. I didn't want to hear it out loud. Mother's Day morning, I arrived early, just like Lauren expected. The house was already buzzing when I pulled into the driveway. Catering trays stacked in the kitchen. Flowers everywhere. My mother moving from room to room. Directing, correcting, rearranging. She greeted me with a quick hug that didn't reach her eyes. Good, you're here, she said. We have a lot to do. For the next few hours, I cooked, cleaned, set tables, refilled drinks. The usual role, the helpful one, the invisible one. Lauren arrived just before noon. Perfectly styled. Expensive dress. Gift bag in hand. My mother lit up when she walked in. There you are, she said, kissing her cheek. You look beautiful. Lauren glanced at the room. Everything looks great, she said. To my mother, not to me. By the time the rest of the family arrived, the house was full. Laughter, small talk, clinking glasses. People I hadn't seen in years asking polite questions about work, about life, about how fast time moves. During the group photo, my mother positioned everyone carefully. She placed Lauren beside her. When I stepped forward, she gestured behind the second row. You're taller. You'll block people. I moved without arguing. That's when my grandmother appeared at my side. She took my arm, her grip surprisingly firm. Whatever happens today, she said softly. Don't interrupt. Don't explain. Let her finish. I looked at her, confused. You'll know when, she added. Lunch came and went. Toasts followed. Compliments about motherhood, about sacrifice, about how lucky we all were. My mother waited. She always did. When she finally stood, the room quieted on instinct. She smiled, adjusted the papers in her hand, and cleared her throat. I just want to thank you all for being here, she began. Being a mother is the hardest job in the world. You give, and sometimes you wonder if it was worth it. Her eyes moved deliberately until they landed on me. I felt it then. The certainty. The setup locking into place. This wasn't a celebration. It was a stage. And I was exactly where she wanted me when she reached into her bag and said, very calmly, I brought something I think everyone should see. The room leaned forward, and somewhere behind me, my grandmother let go of my arm. My mother didn't rush. She took her time pulling the envelope from her bag, smoothing it on the table like it mattered, like presentation was part of the point. The room was quiet now, in that way it only gets when people sense. They're about to witness something they won't be able to unsee. I've spent a lot of years, she said, being told that motherhood is supposed to be unconditional, that we're not allowed to talk about the toll it takes. A few heads nodded. Someone murmured agreement. But unconditional doesn't mean unaccountable, she continued. And I think it's time we were honest about that. She opened the envelope and lifted out several printed pages, staples, charts, color-coded sections. She'd put work into this. I prepared a breakdown, she said lightly, just for clarity. Then she started passing copies around the table. At first, people took them without really looking. Polite smiles, expectation. Then eyes dropped to the pages. Brows furrowed. Smiles faded. I didn't need to see my copy. I already knew what it said. My name was printed at the top in bold. Under it, a list. Birth expenses, childcare, clothes, tutoring, activities, college. Each item had a number next to it. Precise, confident, wrong. My mother read selectively, her voice warm, conversational. Tutoring due to poor performance, she said. That adds up over time. A nervous laugh somewhere near the end of the table. College expenses, she continued. And yes, we helped as much as we could, but not everyone takes full advantage of what they're given. She looked directly at me then. I didn't look away. This, she said, tapping the bottom of the page, is what it costs to raise a child who refuses to take responsibility for her life. Silence. Not the comfortable kind. The kind where people stop breathing. Someone cleared their throat. Someone else shifted in their chair. I could feel eyes moving toward me, then quickly away, like eye contact might be contagious. My father stared down at his hands. Lauren's lips pressed into a thin line, the smallest hint of satisfaction there before she masked it. This isn't meant to be cruel, my mother added, as if that mattered. It's meant to be honest. Sometimes honesty hurts. She gestured to the total at the bottom of the page. $457,000, she said. That's the cost of raising a failure. The word landed hard, heavy. Final. No one spoke. I stood there, holding the edge of the counter behind me, my pulse steady in my ears. This was the moment she'd been rehearsing. The moment she expected me to break. Cry. Apologize. Explain myself into a corner. I did none of those things. I let the silence stretch. Long enough that people started to get uncomfortable for a different reason. Then my mother did something else. She reached over to the fireplace mantel and lifted a frame I hadn't noticed before. She slid the printed breakdown inside it and placed it front and center, next to the family photo. A reminder, she said, stepping back. For all of us. That was the point where something shifted. Not in me, in the room. Because humiliation only works if everyone agrees to participate. And I could feel that agreement beginning to crack. I took a breath. Not because I was nervous. Because timing matters. My grandmother hadn't said a word. She just watched me, waiting. I pushed off the counter and took one step forward. Mom, I said calmly. Every head snapped up. If we're sharing numbers today, I continued, I think it's only fair we share all of them. Her smile froze. Just slightly. What are you talking about? She asked. I reached into my pocket and took out my phone. I've been meaning to have this conversation privately, I said. But since you chose to make it public? I let the sentence trail off. Around the table, people leaned forward again, but this time, not toward her. Toward me. Before I could continue, my mother's voice cut in, sharper now. This isn't the time. I met her eyes. It's the only time. And with that, I unlocked my phone and opened the folder she never knew existed. The one I'd named Insurancing. If you've ever been in a room where you know the truth is about to come out, you know the feeling. That held breath. That edge between denial and impact. Before I show you what was in that folder, I want to ask you something. If someone humiliated you in front of everyone you loved, publicly, deliberately, would you defend yourself? Or would you stay quiet to keep the peace? That's the question I asked myself in that moment. And my answer changed everything. I didn't raise my voice. That's the part people remember later. I didn't shout. I didn't accuse. I didn't use words like steal or fraud right away. I just stepped into the center of the room and spoke the way I do at work. Measured. Clear, factual. I'm going to send something to everyone here, I said. Please check your email. My mother took a step toward me. You're embarrassing yourself, she warned, her voice low. I looked at her and smiled. Not kindly, not cruelly, neutrally. I've already been embarrassed, I said. This is just accounting. I tapped my screen and hit send. One by one, phones buzzed around the table. Not all at once, staggered, uneven, impossible to ignore. The sound filled the room in waves. My mother's face changed first. Not fear yet. Confusion. The way it does when a script goes off book. What did you send? She asked. Documents, I said. The same kind you like. A few people had already opened the email. I watched their expressions shift. Polite interest giving way to confusion. Then concern. Uncle David frowned. Linda, what is this? That, I said, is the withdrawal statement from my college trust. I turned my phone so the screen was visible to the people closest to me. Both my sister and I were supposed to have education funds. Same amount, set up by our grandparents. Lauren used hers. Graduated debt-free. I paused, let it settle. Mine was withdrawn in full on. August 14th, 2016. 1 month before I started college. My mother shook her head quickly. That money went to family expenses, she said. You don't understand. It was transferred to your personal account, I said calmly. And 1 week later, you purchased a vehicle in cash. I swiped to the next page. A Lexus, I added. Paid in full. The room went very still. My father stood up slowly, as if his legs had decided before his mind had caught up. Linda, he said quietly. Is this true? She opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. I did what I had to do, she said. That money was still for the family. For which family? My aunt asked, softly, almost afraid of the answer. That's not all, I said. I didn't rush. I didn't stack revelations. I let each one land before moving on. For 6 consecutive years, I continued. My mother claimed me as a dependent on her tax returns. Someone laughed nervously. Parents do that all the time. I was 23, I said. Living on my own. Paying my own rent. My own insurance. My own tuition loans. I pulled up the spreadsheet. Each year, she received between $4,000 and $6,500 in tax benefits. Total, approximately C to 31,000. I met my mother's eyes. That's federal tax fraud. My grandmother exhaled sharply. My uncle, who had worked as an accountant his entire life, didn't look at me. He looked at her. You used her social security number, he said. You realize what that means. My mother's composure cracked. You're twisting things, she said. She agreed to this. I didn't, I said. And I paid Farthry $200 to a CPA to fix the mess you left. My father sat back down heavily. He looked older than I'd ever seen him. And finally, I said, there's my credit. That got everyone's attention. I was denied my first apartment because my credit score was bond, I continued. I'd never missed a payment. Never even had a credit card. I opened the last attachment. 3 credit cards opened in my name. Over 4 years, maxed out, gasps this time, real ones. Total balance, I said, $46,900. This is identity theft, my uncle said flatly. My mother's face had gone pale. You're lying, she whispered. I shook my head once. I cleared it eventually, I said. Lawyers, time, proof, everything is documented. Movement at the edge of the room caught my attention. My sister was standing. Sit down, I said without raising my voice. She froze. 2 of those cards, I added, had statements mailed to your address. Lauren's face drained of color. I didn't know, she said quickly. Mom said it was temporary. I pulled up a receipt. An engagement ring, I said. $8,400. Shipped to your apartment. Her husband stared at her hand. The room broke into whispers. Then arguments. Then open disbelief. But I wasn't finished. There's one more thing, I said quietly. And for the first time since this started, my mother looked afraid, because she knew. There was still one file in that folder I hadn't opened yet. And that one wasn't about money. It was about why. If you've ever watched someone lose control of a story, they've been telling for decades. You know the moment. It's subtle. Their confidence collapses inward. My grandmother leaned forward in her chair. Go on, she said. And that's when I opened the last file. I didn't open the file right away. I let the silence stretch just a little longer than was comfortable. Long enough for my mother's breathing to change. Long enough for everyone to feel that this wasn't just another document. This was something else. This one, I said, isn't a spreadsheet. My mother took a step toward me. You don't know what you're doing, she said, her voice tight. This has nothing to do with... It has everything to do with this, I interrupted, still calm. It has to do with why you've treated me like a problem my entire life. That got everyone's attention. I looked around the room. Faces tense, confused, waiting. 3 years ago, I continued, I saw a message by accident. I wasn't looking for it. It wasn't sent to me. My mother's eyes widened. Just slightly. Enough. It was sent to Lauren, I said. And it explained something I'd never been able to understand. Lauren shook her head, tears already forming. You said you wouldn't... I didn't, I said. Until today. I finally tapped the screen and sent the last file. Phones buzzed again. This time, faster, sharper, like a collective intake of breath turned digital. What is this? My aunt whispered. My father stared at his screen without blinking. The file was a screenshot, a single text message, dated by July 11th, 2021. From my mother. To my sister. She isn't Richard's biological child. Don't ever tell him. If he finds out, he'll leave me. This never comes out. No explanation. No apology, just fear. The room went completely still. Not awkward still. Not polite still. The kind of still that happens after something irreversible. My father's phone slipped from his hand and hit the floor. What is this? He asked quietly. My mother shook her head. It's not... It's real, Lauren said suddenly. Her voice broke. She sent it to me. She made me promise not to say anything. My father looked at her, then at me. How long? He asked. 29 years, I said. Since before I was born. The weight of it hit all at once. Every comment, every comparison, every reminder that I didn't quite belong. I wasn't the failure. I was the evidence. You punished me, I said to my mother. Not because I disappointed you, but because I reminded you. Her face collapsed. The performance finally gone. I was 17, she whispered. I was scared. It was one mistake. One mistake doesn't last 3 decades, my grandmother said. Her voice was cold now. Lies do. My father stood, slowly, deliberately. I raised her, he said. I loved her. That doesn't disappear. He turned toward the door. I need air. Richard, wait, my mother cried. He didn't. The door closed behind him with a finality that echoed through the house. The room fractured after that. People stood, whispered, grabbed coats, looked at my mother like they were seeing her for the first time. My grandmother remained seated. She looked at my mother and said, "You didn't just lie to him. You lied to all of us." My mother sank into a chair. Everything she'd built her authority on, morality, sacrifice control, collapsed in minutes. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one being judged. Before the noise fully returned, I asked one quiet question. "If you were in my place," I said to the room, "would you have stayed silent?" No one answered, because there was only one honest response, and it wasn't comfortable. The house didn't explode all at once. It fractured. People began leaving in pieces, small groups at first, then in waves. Chairs scraped against the floor. Coats were pulled on without goodbyes. Conversations started and stopped mid-sentence, like no one quite knew what words were acceptable anymore. My mother stayed where she was. For the first time I could remember, she looked small. Her posture had collapsed inward, shoulders curved, hands clenched together in her lap. The authority she'd always worn so effortlessly was gone. No one rushed to comfort her. My aunt was the first to speak. "I need to go," she said quietly, already holding her keys. She didn't look at my mother when she passed her. My uncle followed, then another cousin, then another. By the time the room settled again, more than half the family was gone. My grandmother stood. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't accuse. She didn't cry. She simply walked to the mantel, lifted the framed bill my mother had displayed so proudly, and removed it. The glass made a soft sound as she set it face down on the table. "This," she said, "comes down." No one argued. She turned to my mother. "You will not speak to her again today." "I'm her mother," my mother said weakly. "No," my grandmother replied. "You are the woman who chose to hurt her instead of telling the truth." The room went quiet again. A different kind of quiet, not shock, resolution. My grandmother looked at me then. Her eyes softened just a little. "Come with me," she said. We walked into her study at the back of the house. The door closed behind us, muting the rest of the world. She sat at her desk, folded her hands, and looked directly at me. "I suspected something was wrong for years," she said. "Not the details, but the way you were treated. It never sat right." She took a breath. "I should have pushed harder." "You didn't know," I said. "I knew enough," she replied. And I stayed quiet. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a folder. Thick, legal. "I made a call this morning," she said. After I saw that message, I felt my chest tighten. "My will has been updated," she continued. "Effective immediately." I didn't speak. "Your mother's share has been reduced," she said. "Not eliminated, enough to prevent a legal challenge, but reduced." She slid the folder toward me. "Your share has been increased." I stared at the papers without touching them. "This isn't a reward," she said firmly. "It's accountability." I swallowed. "Grandma, I didn't—" "I know," she interrupted. "That's why." She stood and opened the door. When we returned to the living room, my mother looked up. Hope flickered across her face, briefly. The days after Mother's Day felt unreal, like the silence after an accident when you're still checking yourself to see what's broken. My phone stayed face down for most of that first night. When I finally looked, there were dozens of messages. Some from relatives I barely spoke to, some from people who'd never once questioned my mother's version of events. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I should have said something years ago." I read them slowly. I didn't reply right away. Healing doesn't happen on a group chat timeline. The only call I answered was my father's. He was sitting in his car when he called me. Engine off, voice steady in that way people get when they're holding themselves together out of necessity. "You didn't do anything wrong," he said before I could speak. "I need you to know that. We didn't talk long. We didn't need to. Some truths don't require discussion. They just need to be acknowledged." He moved out 2 days later. My mother tried to reach me once. One voicemail, no apology. Just confusion wrapped in entitlement. "I don't understand how you could do this to me," she said. I deleted it. That was my boundary. Quiet, firm, final. Life didn't magically fix itself after that. It didn't need to. What changed was the noise. The constant background hum of self-doubt went silent. Within a month, my CPA confirmed the last fraudulent account had been removed from my credit report. My score climbed steadily. Not overnight, But honestly, the way it should have all along. I stopped bracing myself when my phone rang. My grandmother called every Wednesday evening. We didn't always talk about what happened. Sometimes we talked about recipes, or the weather, or nothing important at all. That mattered more. I kept my job. I kept my routine. I kept my small apartment, but it felt different now. Like it belonged to me in a way it hadn't before. I didn't feel victorious. I felt finished. Finished apologizing for existing. Finished shrinking to make someone else comfortable. Finished protecting a story that was never mine to carry. People still ask if I regret doing it publicly, if I should have handled it privately, if family matters should stay inside the family. Here's what I know. What happened to me survived because it was private. It ended because it wasn't. My mother calculated the cost of raising me down to the dollar. She counted diapers and school supplies and time. What she never counted was the cost of lying. The cost of favoritism. The cost of turning a child into a shield for her own shame. That bill came due all at once. I'm not a failure. I never was. I was a convenient story. And now, I'm the one who gets to write the ending. Quietly, honestly, on my own terms.